Hi, Dr. Suzanne Bechtel here. This video has really technically two introductions. The first one here is here and now is just an introduction to what's going on in this particular ALWD tutorial. And as I'll mention at the end, in the next video you'll see that what her goal is to walk students through all or most of an assignment where they're doing some practical hands-on work. In this video, the primary areas that they're covered are case names, reporters and page, references, and court names and dates. Reporters and page references, excuse me, and court names and dates. And it has focus on ALWD Rules 12, 5, 6, and Appendix 1, 3, and 4. So I have one more introduction coming up right after this, showing you the document. Let me know if you have any questions. Hi, Dr. Suzanne Bechtel here. In this assignment, Michelle's going to walk students through this ALWD assignment number 3, and it starts with case names. She has some prompts and example exhibits. She did a really good job on this. I can get copies of that, but she goes through case names first. That's when she refers to part 1. She's referring to parts as she moves through this in her tutorial. And then reporters and page references, and then she's going to go into court names and dates. So I'll supply these handouts to Sean or to the committee, so you can use them yourself. Good assignments. They've been very effective in my classes. I took on her template. She's an excellent teacher, very thorough. So anyway, I'm going to do that. Thanks.
For the ALWD assignment number 3, you will need your ALWD book, and we're mainly going to be looking at rules number 12, 5, and 6. And also Appendix 1, Appendix 3, and 4. So let's take a look at question number 1. So it says, Wayne Curtis Poor sued his wife, Diane Poor, for divorce. The trial court dismissed the husband's complaint, so he appealed. The name of the full caption on the case is Wayne Curtis Poor versus Diane Poor. How should the case name appear in the full citation? Hopefully you said A. A is correct because we remove all the other names of the parties and just stay with the 2 last names. So that's why Poor versus Poor is correct. So let's look at the next citation. So using Westlaw Next, which we know out of habit that Westlaw citations are always incorrect, you have to switch the citation to ALWD citation so that it's correct. So here you find a case displayed, the caption below. How should the case name appear in the full citation? So hopefully you remember in rule number 12 that you have to remove all other parties except for the first party on both sides of the verses. And then we use only the last name of the 2 parties. So in this situation, A is also correct. So we would only retain the first party's last name and then versus the first party's last name of the defendant's side. and we'll remove all other information. So A would be correct. So let's take a look at number 3, because this one has a corporation name instead of a person as a defendant. So Frank Miller sued the Sara Lee Corporation, claiming he had been wrongfully denied benefits from the company's pension plan. The trial court granted his motion for summary judgment. The company appealed. Examine the case, the caption of the case on appeal as it appears in the Federal Reporter. How should the case name appear in the full citation? So as we've learned in rule number 12, and for the plaintiff side, we're only going to use his last name, Mello. Now for the corporation, Sara Lee is the name of the corporation, so we cannot remove any one of those names. Now remember that our goal is to abbreviate as much as we can. So since we have to drop all the other information off of here, and Sara Lee could be confused as a person's name, you will have to leave corporation listed, and then you would abbreviate corporation. So seeing our options, D would be correct. So when we're talking about like number 4 and number 5, you have to think about what court are you in. So here it's the Court of Appeals of Virginia, which means we are in a state court. So you'll have to pay attention to Rule 12 to look at what happens when there's a name of a state as one of the parties. The same will happen with number 5. Here we are in the Supreme Court of the United States. So there's a different rule for when you are in federal court and you're referencing a state. So let's skip on down to part 2. So here is where we're talking about reporters. So remember that the reporter is where in a publishing you're going to find your case. So here you're going to need to use appendix number 1, and that's the one that's going to have the most information for you. So then what you're going to do is you're going to search through and see how would you abbreviate the case reporter names. And of course, you're going to use the charts in appendix 1. So you'll need to figure out, first of all, are you in state court or are you in federal court? If you are in federal court, you know it's going to be at the very beginning of appendix 1. If you're in state, then you have to look alphabetically at the later half of the appendix. So you'll notice that these do not have state names. So you kind of have to look through all the reporter names to figure out which state we're talking about. And some are, there's multiple states per reporter. So for example, the Southern Reporter in number 8, I know that to be as Florida, but that might also include Alabama, and I believe it's Georgia as well. So for Northeastern Reporter, a good idea to do is think about what states might be included in the Northeastern, so the Northeastern side of the United States, and then pull up the information for those states until you find the correct one. So that is your little cheat sheet for part 2. So let's go ahead and do the very first one, Northeastern Reporter. So then you're going to pull up Appendix 1 and see which states would that fall into. So we know we're not in federal court because it doesn't say federal reporter. So Northeastern, so that's probably going to be my Virginia, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, maybe New Jersey. So I'm just going to pick one of the states. And actually, Massachusetts is the one that falls into that category. So if you pull up the table for Massachusetts, you're going to find how to write Northeast second. So on the table on page 393, you're going to notice that A is actually the correct answer. And let's go ahead and scroll down to part 3. So part 3 is court names. So for this one, I find it very helpful to use Appendix 4. So Appendix 4 is kind of set up the way all the other ones is. So it always starts off in federal court and then it moves into state courts. So remember that in federal court, you also have divisions and districts and circuits that have to do with states. So don't confuse that section with the state section. So you have to pay attention to what court system you're in. So number 14 says Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. So we know we are in a state court. So let's go ahead and pull up the Massachusetts section of the state court. So we are looking at page 504. And the order of the courts is also in the order of the hierarchy. So the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts is actually the state's highest court. So that when you cut across, you see here exactly how to write that state abbreviation. And then we're going to use the date where the case was decided. So we know that Mass period, MASS period, is the abbreviation. And we know that the case was decided in 2005. So answer is D, as in dog. So let's go ahead and do number 15 together. So which of the following court date parentheticals should be used in citing a case decided in 2004 by the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit? So are we in federal court or in state court? Hopefully you said federal court. And we know that because it says United States Court of Appeals. So we're going to be looking in the front half of Appendix 4. So then you have to look at the level of court system that you're in. So it says here the Court of Appeals. So you should be looking at page 499. So under that division, we see here District of Columbia Circuit, and that the abbreviation is D period C period space CIR period. And by process of elimination, you should have received, you should have picked number A as the correct one. So you will continue to do that for the other examples in this assignment. If you have any questions, just let me know.